Hi, my name is Rowena Chiu and I'm running for Palo Alto School Board. I have 4 children here in the district and they are in 10th grade at Middle College, 7th grade in JLS Connections, and then I have a 4th grader and a 1st grader at Aloni Elementary School where I've been the PTA president for the last couple of years. I'm running for school board on a platform of improving mental health, of special education, and on data transparency, and I have a huge concern about each one of these issues.
All 6 of the candidates for the Palo Alto School Board in 2024 were invited to these interviews. The 5 active candidates responded and were provided with a complete copy of the questions in advance. These questions do focus on special education, but I believe they will give you a good sense of the way each of the candidates think and will approach whatever issues they face on the job. Full details and the transcripts of all of the interviews will be available at disabilityalmanac.com/PA2024. Again, disabilityalmanac.com/PA2024. Enjoy the interview. If you were talking to your grandkids 10 or 25 years from now, long after you've served your 2 terms if you want on the school board, what accomplishment would you share with them?
The single biggest accomplishment which kicks off my website is to say each child must grow. And by that I mean I hope that we move the school district to a place where it meets the needs of each child in the district. I have 4 children in the district. They are incredibly different learners, and I would like to see a school district that serves children with diverse needs. And that might mean diverse needs on the mental health front. It might mean diverse needs on a special education front. And simply, even in terms of academic advancement, each one of my children and each one of the children in the district have different needs in that area. And so I'm looking for a district that serves the needs of diverse children. My family have been very much involved with choice programs, and I think one of the benefits of choice programs for our family is it allows children who've come to school with very specific, quirky, unique situations, the autonomy and the space to really be themselves and to thrive.
There are both general education students and special education students who are not going to college at PAUSD. What are your thoughts on the current state of our vocational and post-secondary programs now, and where do you think they should move?
From the very few conversations I've had with people who have children in the vocational and post-secondary programs, I understand that there is much work to be done in this area. I will admit that it's an area that I don't know a great deal about, and I'm still doing some research. The only tangential experience I have in this area is I was involved with a vocational and post-secondary program in London. And what I would say about that program is it allowed for a diversity of path. I think there is a lot of focus in Palo Alto on going to college. Some might argue too much focus on going to college. And I would like to see the district offer viable options to go many different paths in life, because it's possible, of course it is possible, I can't believe I'm even saying this, but it's possible to go to college and not to go to college, and still have a very successful, fulfilled and thriving life. And I think that is a message that's somewhat lacking in this district because of an over-focus on college. In the program that I started in London, because I was originally a filmmaker, we taught children in that particular part of the UK who were not college bound vocational skills such as DJing, music making, record recording and filmmaking. And so I was involved with that program as a professional in the filmmaking industry. And I thought it was very inspiring to have people at mid-level in their various careers come back and show these young people who are kind of eager to get a start in life, that there are many ways in which we can walk a path. And each one of us were thriving in our careers. We really loved what we were doing. And it was very hands-on work. So I frequently got secondary school students who told me, I can't sit anymore in a classroom and learn about English and history and maths that's not relevant to me, but I want to make a film about a subject that I'm very passionate about. And so for me, it was very fulfilling to be part of that program, and I hope for the students that participated in our program over the years that we did it, it was also fulfilling for them. And so this is a vision that I would love to bring to PAUSD if I were able to do that.
Deciding to run for the school board is a big decision. Was there a specific reason, or incident, or experience, or a straw that broke the camel's back that inspired you to run now, this year?
I think this is a great question. I never thought about running for school board, and it certainly very much is a big decision. I mean, for me personally, it was, of course, my foray into local politics through Aloni Room 19. You know, I have to say that although each one of my children had had different issues within the school district, I hadn't done much in the way of a more holistic advocacy role prior to Aloni Room 19. And for those who are not aware of that background, it was when a decision was made last February to close Room 19 at Aloni, which was Aloni's Learning Centre. And then because I was PTA president at the time, a number of parents in Room 19 asked me to consider stepping forward to advocate against the closure of that room, which they felt was a big loss for themselves personally and also for their children. And we made the argument that in closing Aloni's Learning Centre, we were depriving a protected group, that is mod severe special education, children that participated in mod severe special education, from a very distinct form of education that could be found through Aloni as a choice program, as a lottery program. And there were many specifics about Aloni, you know, that Room 19 community wanted to preserve for their children and also for future mod severe children, i.e. access to the farm, a less structured environment, a school that doesn't have bells or grades or homework, and where the teachers are known by their first name. I think a number of parents felt very strongly that the Aloni education system was A, distinctive, but B, particularly distinctive and beneficial to mod severe students. So this was a very specific issue that I advocated on, and this got me involved in local advocacy. I had a groundswell of support from the parents through this particular issue, and I suppose you could have called it the straw that broke the camel's back, in the sense that that inspired me to step forward into a bigger role in local politics.
Inclusion for students with disabilities has been steadily improving nationally, but according to the 21 March report by the school district, inclusion has been steadily declining over the past 5 years here. What is your read on the situation for inclusion in Palo Alto, and what, if anything, needs to be done?
I'm a big proponent of inclusion classrooms, and I'm very sad to see that trend in Palo Alto. I don't think it is helpful either for the neurodiverse community or the neurotypical community that we now see less inclusion in Palo Alto. It makes me very sad. My first experience was an inclusion classroom was more than 10 years ago through the FORS inclusion classroom that was taught at Greendale through Preschool Family by Teacher Marianne and Teacher French. And I will say that my own child, who is a pretty quirky child even at the age of 4, benefited incredibly from having a range of diverse classmates, of that being a very inclusive and welcoming environment of diverse set of learners, a diverse way of engaging with the world. I always argue that there's a lot of diversity in the workplace, that generally corporate workplaces need to be inclusive because we need different skill sets, we need different minds to solve a corporate problem. And so I don't see why classrooms should be any different. And so I push really hard for inclusion classrooms. I felt in advocating for Aloni Room 19 to remain open, I felt that it would be a great loss to Aloni to have less of the mod severe kids spending a certain percentage of their time in a neurotypical classroom. I believe that it benefits both sides. So whilst I don't have a full and transparent understanding as to why inclusion is becoming less in Palo Alto, I do see that trend, and it's something that is of concern to me and sadness to me.
At the very last board meeting in June, in the information-only slide packages, there was a report that was not discussed showing that there was a substantial number of 8th grade students failing math. What are your thoughts on this matter, and what do you think about how the district and board should handle issues like this in the future?
I think there's a broader issue about transparency of information and of data. I see a concerning trend where there is data, I suppose, that is not exactly hidden, but is not exactly widely publicized. And so I think this sort of, more generally speaking, goes towards this transparency issue in the sense that it would heal the relationship between the parents and the board if the board were more open about its reason for making decisions. And that's a very general comment that doesn't pertain specifically to maths. But I do want to come on specifically to maths. Obviously, it's a very contentious issue. It's also an issue where my family have been specifically involved in the sense that I have a child who's very math focused, that she sat and failed both the 6th grade and 7th grade math tests and then wanted to go on and do what they call the geo jump. So between 9th grade and 10th grade, between 8th grade and 9th grade, she took summer geometry and UC Scout geometry so that she could move on to algebra trig in 9th grade. So during that time when she was considering jumping geometry over the summer, I talked to a lot of families whose children had done this, and I said, well, do you think it's a good idea? Where do you think the district is with maths and so on? And I've continued to talk to a lot of math families about this since. I think, and again, I'm not privy to the reason why the district made these decisions, and people have, very many different views about the DEF issue, or the question of, 8th grade students failing. I think a simple response is that people think that over time, the academic agenda on maths, or the academic curriculum on maths, has gotten more and more complicated with rising academic standards, and that children, 8th grade children in this district, feel more and more pressure to advance in maths, and therefore they simply, there's a school of thought that says they simply can't keep up. I'm not really sure that is the case. It is really concerning. I think there's a wide range of skill sets within a math classroom, and I think clearly we're not meeting the needs of middle school and high school students when it comes to math. As controversial as it is, I would like to see the district look again at its de-laning policy, and whilst I understand that laning is controversial, I wonder whether some middle ground or compromise could be considered around flexible grouping, restoring confidence in math skills, looking again perhaps at the elementary school math curriculum to think about the extent to which base skills are well taught in our elementary schools, because I feel that there may be a situation where some of those basic skills in elementary school are lacking, and that's slipping through the cracks so that there's no foundational skill when kids get up to middle school, I should say.
What are your thoughts on suspending students in elementary and middle school? Some other school districts have banned suspensions for children this young, as they are not really of an age where they can make rational decisions. The children probably consider being out of school a reward, and the data shows that there is substantial disproportionality in the use of these suspensions.
This is another area, another trend, I would say, that I'm finding discouraging and pretty sad, I would say. I think research has shown that punitive measures, especially at an elementary age, where, as you say, children are too young to really make rational decisions, their frontal cortex isn't really fully developed. I think that that punitive measure of being out of school is really rooted in shaming, and I think that is unfortunate and unhealthy for all children, let alone special ed children who perhaps already feel disconnected with the classroom. I think more time outside of the classroom isn't going to really improve their confidence and their willingness to be in the classroom when they return. And so I think this is an unfortunate trend that I see, and I would very much like to push for a banning of suspension for children this young as well.
Thank you. You've been running for several months now and listening to a lot of people. Without naming names or revealing something specific or personal, What have you learned that has surprised you the most?
I will admit that I thought that there would be more relevance in what I've done politically so far, which is very irrelevant to this district, I think. I've so far been a global advocate for a very specific issue, and I was very surprised that the skill set for that global advocacy campaign really wasn't at all relevant to coming onto school board. I thought there'd be more transferable skills about that, and actually there aren't. Instead, what I have done is had to really be very humble and in a learning position, and as you say, talk to very many people and learn about the issues that people are concerned about for this district. I think another thing that has perhaps been less of a surprise, but still is something I'm learning about, is that people across the district are concerned about things that might clash with one another. This won't be a surprise to you, but it is a surprise to me in the sense that there isn't cohesion around a few key issues. And in fact, in one day, I might talk to 2 or 3 or 4 different people who would advocate for a very different approach to exactly the same issue. So one thing that I've learned, I guess I didn't learn that from scratch, but it has been brought home to me, is that as a politician, even a local politician, you can't please all interest groups because a lot of those interest groups are actually pulling in opposite directions. But I think this has encouraged me to look more deeply at what my own position is on that issue and to develop the confidence to push against someone who perhaps has been working in that issue for longer. And that has been a skill set that's been surprisingly difficult to learn.
There seems to be a lot of tension between the teachers and the school board and the district administration. The negotiations with the teachers union appeared quite contentious, and at least in board meetings, there were a number of cases where the district and teachers did not seem to be communicating. How do you read the situation? And what, if anything, would you do either about the relationship between the board and the teachers or the district and the teachers?
I think there's been a situation where there have been a number of very contentious issues being brought before the board recently, teacher pay, of course, being only just one of them, which has, damaged the relationship between the teachers and the board. There's also been the issue of violence against teachers, of course, which was saddening for everybody concerned. I don't think it's only teachers that feel disenfranchised. Obviously, many high school students felt disenfranchised about advanced acceleration, math acceleration, I should say, and parents, of course, have felt disenfranchised about many issues, which isn't something that's new. I think in terms of rebuilding relationships between the board and teachers and parents and students, I think that we should think about heralding a new era of listening relationship. I think as we had discussed earlier, the issues sometimes aren't about what the actual policy themselves, as in what is done about a particular issue, but it is about how the district and the administration and the board go about communicating their decisions about a particular policy and the implementation of that policy rather than the policy itself. And so I think some going back to the drawing board is required, and thinking about how decisions are communicated. Does the board and administration appear to respect teachers, parents and students? Are they involved in decision making? Is the maximum autonomy given to them in terms of their children's education? I think there's a big feeling that teachers have lost autonomy in the classroom, that parents have lost autonomy over their own children's educational experience. There are concerns about a flight towards private school, a draining from the public system, the most engaged parents leaving or not wanting to fund the district. And I think if we can turn some of this around and create a listening partnership where parents, teachers and students alike genuinely feel that the board is on their side and will listen to the things that they're concerned about, and even if they are unable to do anything about them in a practical way, will offer at least a respectful explanation as to why these things are happening. I think that might go a long way towards improving communication and lessening the sense of disenfranchisement that's currently happening in the district.
From the perspective of a number of parents of students with disabilities, That's 1,058 out of the 10,318 total students in the district in the years 2022-2023. The district has been restructuring the program without meaningful prior parental consultation and reducing services. There has been a reduction of elementary learning center sites from 7 to 5 in 2023, and the restructuring of the preschool program to a learning center from a previously inclusive program in 2024, and dropping a math program at JLS in 2023. What is your view of the situation, and what, if anything, do you intend to do about it?
Well, similar to my answer to many of your other excellent questions, I've been watching some of these trends with some dismay without truly understanding why these decisions are being made. We ask the questions, but we don't seem to get an answer that's necessarily that satisfactory. And I think one of the reasons that I was inspired to run is I was often being told, oh, but you can't possibly understand what's happening or the pressures on us to make these sorts of decisions. And I suppose that if I'm lucky enough to gain a seat on the board, I hope to gain some insight into why these decisions are being made. I think I return to the other point in the sense that perhaps the decision is not necessarily a bad decision per se, but the way it's being communicated and the lack of transparency around the reasoning for that decision being made disenfranchises parents, students and teachers, and it is a trend that I would like to reverse. So for instance, let's go to something very specific which I was involved with last year. If you talk about the reduction of elementary learning centre sites from 7 to 5 in 2023, this may have been beneficial for the students that are moved, but the cost of moving, the personal cost of moving, was so huge for each family. I feel like we as a community, and certainly they as families, deserved a better explanation as to why it was being done. Even if we agree with the eventual outcome, the path to that outcome is important, and the way that that is managed is very important. And so the second part of your question of what do I intend to do about it is, I hope that if I were lucky enough to be on the board, a greater fairness and transparency and improved communication will lessen some of the pain around transition that in particular special ed children seem to have to make a great deal. It at once seems harder, it at once is harder for children from this particular community to make a transition, to make a move. Special ed kids, certainly my own special ed kid, often struggle with transition. So it seems deeply unfair that they at once experience transition with more struggle, and they are simultaneously asked to transition more than neurotypical kids. So for the families that I'm close to who I've seen their children move from site to site seemingly every year, and sometimes even within a year, I think that obviously this is a huge challenge to having our special ed community truly integrated, serving the community well, having them be inclusive in classrooms and thriving. A lot of these goals don't seem to be met well by these constant transitions, both in terms of site and in terms of teacher.
How do you see the participation by the members of the public in school board meetings? As meetings held in public, where the public is principally the audience for a meeting of the board, or as a public meeting where the public is a critical part of the proceedings, both to raise new topics and explore agenda items?
I'm constantly being told that the second isn't possible. I think it would be ideal if the participation by members of the public were seen as truly a discussion of equals, really, a public meeting where the public can come, as you say, a critical part of the proceedings, to explore new topics and to raise new topics and explore agenda items. Where the public has come and attempted to raise topics, explore agenda items, I've seen that they are very eloquent and they have good things to say, both you, Steve, about special ed or math, or kids, high school kids that come and advocate for better math or multivariable calculus. Obviously any engagement with the public I think is incredibly valuable. I think the public, because they are frequently the people themselves that receive either these special ed services or would be the direct beneficiary of better maths, of multivariable calculus, they can argue for these things very eloquently. And so I think, and indeed they are the very people that the board is looking to serve, and the people that voted for the board. So I think an atmosphere where there's respect for diverse opinion, and that diverse opinion is brought to the board and argued for cogently, respectfully, and is permitted to be in the room, would be hugely beneficial. Instead, what I do see this trend where the public is principally the audience, and I think there's no better illustration of this than when you come to a board meeting with many things to say about a topic you feel passionately about, and you're given 2 minutes or just 1 minute, and you're frankly cut off before you've even had a chance to really raise an issue that has great nuance. I think that this, more than anything, gives the public the impression that the board isn't particularly listening and doesn't particularly value your opinion, but is merely paying lip service because it allows you this minute or two to cram in all your complicated thoughts about an issue that is directly affecting you, your child, or your family. I think it's a great shame that that has taken place. I've been told many times, that's an issue of practicality to keep these board meetings running because so many people want to come and speak. But I would really encourage a revisiting of that, because I think it doesn't communicate the idea that voters in the room and members of the school district, either students or parents and or staff that teach within that district, are truly respected and their opinion isn't brought to the table on an equal level to that of the board members whom they voted in.
Lots of parents are going to come to you for advice. What would you advise a parent who is concerned about getting their child assessed for special education services? And B, how would you advise a parent whose child has been determined to be eligible for special education services but is concerned about using them?
It's an issue that is very personal to me because I had a long journey and a great struggle to get my own child assessed for special education services within the district. And then even after my child was indeed determined to be eligible for special ed services, I feel like it's a constant road to advocacy. Parents have been coming to me for advice about this, even without being on the board. And I really struggle with this because I think it's really hard to come up with a positive and an optimistic narrative about it. I think it is a long road of advocacy for your child. I would argue that each parent has to be the best advocate for their own child because they know them best. I think things don't fall off a tree in this district, and perhaps not in any school district. Special ed services aren't given to you on a plate. I think that you have, as a parent, have to advocate pretty hard for your own specific child's needs, and I think you have to have a lot of confidence that you know that better than the district. I think it's hard because the district pushed back against you. I think that the district hasn't been good to special ed parents. I think there's been discussion, they push too hard, they're snowflakes, they demand too much, and so on and so forth. I don't think that's true. I think as a parent myself of a special ed child, I think I have worked hard to advocate for her needs at every turn, and I would encourage other parents to have confidence, A, that they know their own child best, B, that they are going to be the best advocate for their child.
The number of students has been steadily decreasing for the past several years now in Palo Alto Unified School District at the rate of around 200 students per year, and is projected to continue to do so according to the district budget estimates. The number of students with disabilities is also decreasing at a similar, though slightly lower rate. How do you perceive this situation, and what do you intend to do about it if you are elected?
There are some that argue that the decline in school enrollment is, purely due to the demographics of the area, in the sense that the town has become very expensive to live in. It is mainly now an office town for tech workers to come into, so office space is overtaking residential space, and that people are moving out of Palo Alto. Palo Alto certainly is a town very expensive to live in. I think young families are tending to choose neighbouring towns, where the housing is better, and perhaps services are better for younger children. And so this is unfortunate for PAUSD because it's always held this reputation for being an excellent school district. And I think obviously funding goes if families move out, but also I think it's difficult to kind of keep a grip on its reputation for excellence as enrollment declines. So I think it is going to be very difficult to do anything about the holistic demographic situation, in the sense that as housing prices rise and as young families are moving to East Bay and even North Bay or San Jose over Palo Alto, I think for the school board to change that demographic trend would be difficult. But I think that there are specific areas where the board may be able to reduce some of the flight, although not entirely. For instance, in the area around the flight to private school, my understanding is that a number of families that continue to live in Palo Alto, despite the high cost of housing in Palo Alto and the excellent school district, the supposedly excellent school district, have ended up, sending their kids to private school, despite having paid for a house in Palo Alto because they wanted to participate in the public school. This is a specific area that I think we can do something about. And I would say, I think it starts with listening to those families who live here but yet have gone to private school. Why isn't this public school district meeting their needs, and how can that be different?
Nationally and in Palo Alto, there is a lot of discrimination against disabled people and children. What do you think the school district should do to change that culture?
I think that this purely comes down to education. I think the loss of inclusion classrooms hasn't helped. Loss of inclusion classrooms, especially at an early early childhood stage, because children they're very young children. Their ideas are less fixed. They're much more fluid about diversity in all senses, to do with race, to do with special education, to do with gender. And I think that, I'm very much an advocate for using inclusion classrooms at an earlier stage in education, particularly in childhood education, because I think it gives very young children, a sense that not all people think the same, not all people look the same. And I think if we can incorporate inclusion classrooms at an earlier stage and then have them consistently work through the elementary, middle and high school stages, I think that this education, awareness, but also just opportunity to be in a space where people work differently and think differently, I think this would help a lot in terms of discrimination, which primarily stems from a lack of awareness and a lack of education.
One of the biggest impacts you are likely to have as a school board member is on direct constituent services, addressing the problems that families have that they haven't been able to address through other means. How do you plan to be available to parents for this service and navigate between individual issues and larger policy problems?
I would say that as a PTA president, I hope that the families I worked with would say that I was very available. I think now in this age of social media, it is hard not to be able to track down a person. And so on a very practical level, I was available by phone, by WhatsApp, by Facebook, every other kind of social media. So I think as a PTA president, parents at Ohlone were able to find me. I generally like talking to people and understanding their concerns with the district, and I one-on-one coffees were, both as a PTA president and now as a political candidate, a very effective way of really talking to people face to face, sitting down one-on-one. I think that's very hard to beat. Of course, that is a huge burden and a time suck, but I think it's part of the role of somebody on the board. I think it's part of the role of someone even on the PTA. The second part of your question, though, about navigating between individual issues and larger policy problems, I think that's a concern even when you are simply a member of the PTA, because invariably parents within your school community will argue very hard for their own particular child's situation, as they have every right to, their own particular child's situation, their own particular family situation. And I think bringing all of those diverse issues that sometimes pull in different directions into a policy problem is a challenge. I have to be honest and say I think that's a challenge. It was a challenge when I was a PTA president. I expect that to be a challenge if I'm ever a board member. I want to draw an illusion from my professional life. I work with the governments of many African countries, and we try to develop policy across vast geographical regions like East Africa or maybe even the continent of Africa itself. And yet within Africa there are countries at very many different stages of economic development. And so it's really about having the vision to see what is the greater good for the largest number of people. And I think that that, as a principle, applies both to when you're addressing economic problems in Africa, but also when you're trying to solve with limited means, limited resources, find a solution for the greatest number of children, of students, of teachers, of parents within the district. So it's a balancing act. There's no simple answer to that. It's taking the time to listen to individual issues and then having a vision to come up with a holistic solution that benefits the most number of people without being afraid. You know, there will always be people who are dissatisfied with the solution, but I think you can sleep well if you have tried to find a solution that works towards the greatest number of people.
While Palo Alto is very highly ranked for general education in California, the performance gap between our special education students and general education students is larger virtually across the board. And this is true for other marginalized groups as well. A particular note is that 43.5% of suspensions are of students with disabilities, even though they are just 10.3% of our student population. What is your goal to close the performance gap and other areas of disproportionality, and how quickly do you want the district to work to close it?
I think we've already discussed the issue of suspensions, and so my policy position would not be against suspensions of especially for younger children. I am very concerned about the performance gap. I think the district is not serving our special education children well. I draw that both from my work as a PTA president advocating for an entire group of mod severe children, but also in terms of my own personal experience with my own child whose needs often haven't been met by the district. So my goal to close the performance gap would be to go to the families who are most in need, who are most, we're failing the most in the sense that looking at information about suspensions, looking at information about children who are not attending school for one reason or another, and really asking those families to speak to why they feel the district isn't serving their needs at this time. How quickly do I want the district to close it? I would consider this to be a top priority for me. I speak about mental health and special ed as two of my top goals, and I think that those goals are actually connected in the sense that obviously if the district is not serving special ed children, their mental health suffers, the mental health of their parents suffer, and the mental health of those who teach them suffer.
4 years from today, at the end of your first term, you are up for re-election. What is one concrete, substantial accomplishment that you will be telling us about in this forum in 4 years?
I started this interview talking about every child must grow. And I think that that idea that every child should thrive within the district is particularly relevant to the special ed community. My concrete goal would be that instead, I came into the district at a time when the district was failing special ed children, that there was a flight from here to private school, particularly for the special ed community, and we were able to reverse that specific trend and offer palatable, serviceable, in fact thriving services for the special ed community. And that would be, I'd be incredibly proud if we got there in 4 years.
Thank you. Would you like to share some closing remarks?
I am really honoured to be in this position of running for school board. I never thought that I would be here, but I think I've learnt a lot in a small amount of time, and if I'm lucky enough to continue to serve the district, I would love to do that to the best of my ability. I have chosen to run on a platform of mental health and special education because these two areas deeply affected my family in the path that my children took through public school, and I understand that they are areas that are of great concern to many within this district. And so I hope to build this platform so that we can make a more collaborative, kinder and more transparent environment for parents, students and teachers within this district. Thank you.
I hope you will join me in thanking the 5 active candidates for the Palo Alto School Board in 2024 for participating in this interview. You can find the full transcript and all of the videos at disabilityalmanac.com/PA2024. Again, disabilityalmanac.com, PA2024.